What is being a corporate lawyer actually like? Is it like what you see in Suits? Is it fast-paced and exciting, closing billion-dollar deals and going out on swanky client dinners and lunches? Whether you're considering studying law or already studying law, you might want an honest idea of what your life might be like down the path of corporate law. Are the horror stories true? Do associates constantly get screamed at by partners and are clients calling them at all hours of the night? Are you constantly pulling all-nighters and will your social life just turn into ruins? What do you actually do day to day and how much do you get paid for it? Before I started down this path, I honestly had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't have any people in my life that were corporate lawyers working in big international firms, and obviously going to job fairs and speaking to people over coffee, they weren't just going to tell me bluntly what it was really like. But I've worked for a couple of years as a corporate lawyer now, both in Sydney, Australia, and in New York City, so I can try to give you some better insight and answers to those questions. First question I get asked all the time is, working as a corporate lawyer like Suits? Do you think it'd be like Suits? The answer is of course not, but you probably already knew that. The name of the firm isn't constantly changing. You aren't blackmailing other lawyers or hatching elaborate schemes to get clients to do what we want. The reality is, a lot of the job is sitting in front of a computer, responding to emails, drafting and reviewing documents, and proofreading. The next thing I'm always asked is, are the hours crazy? This is a little complicated to answer. It's all sort of relative and it really depends on what your definition of crazy is. For me, honestly, I never felt it was that bad. My brother worked in investment banking for years and his hours were definitely way worse. Pretty much coming home after midnight every single day and then heading out at like 7 a.m. So compared to him, my experience was fairly tame. And because I saw that firsthand, I always had the perspective that at least it's not as bad as it could be. The truth is that the work ebbs and flows. It really fluctuates. For me, I work in the corporate M&A team. M&A being mergers and acquisitions. And pretty much what this team does is facilitate the process and the transaction of buying and selling companies. So the amount of work is dependent on a few factors. How many transactions and deals you're working on at any one time, what stage of the process you're at each of those transactions, and how demanding the partner and the client are. So in practice, what this really looks like is some days really just being a 9 to 5 and other days where you're getting absolutely cooked, you're finishing off at like 3 a.m. But most of the time it's somewhere in between that. For me, I always try to leave the office at 6:30, 7 p.m. at the latest. Being at the office when it gets dark is pretty depressing, and I only live about a 30-minute walk away from the office, so I want to walk home while the sun is still up if I can. And when I get home, I have dinner, I relax, I take a break, and then I hop back online that evening if I need to. You will meet people though that love to stay late, or say they're working insane hours, and how tough their life is, and they never make any social events because they're just getting slammed constantly. I always would take this with a grain of salt. I mean, I know how much work I'm doing and what my peers are doing around me. If someone's supposedly working 10 times harder than everyone else, I'm usually a little bit skeptical. Some people do just love the idea of grinding and they love to make sure that you know how much harder they're working than you. When you come across that, I think it's better just to ignore that noise and just to focus on what you have on your plate. While I think the work hours, while they're generally long, they are fairly manageable, but I think the thing that you need to be aware of is that you are constantly on call. Essentially constantly be on standby, ready to respond to emails or texts or calls. Law firms are client focused. So what this means is that law firms make money by providing legal services to clients. And because clients pay quite a bit of money, they have certain expectations. I don't want to generalize that every client is going to demand things from you well outside office hours. It really does depend on the clients that you work with, as well as the partner that you work with and how they manage that relationship. Sometimes expectations are set and boundaries are respected, but as you can imagine, as the scale of the client or the work increases, the more eager a partner is to keep them happy, and then that pressure can get really big. It's not a great feeling to finish playing a basketball game or something and then go to your phone and see a bunch of missed calls and messages. So it is important for you to communicate when you won't be able to respond quickly to things, especially when you're in the midst of a deal. Some slightly more logistical things. I think post-COVID, things have become a lot more flexible. Like for me, I pretty much never wear a suit anymore and I can work from home. Although now a lot of the firms are mandating that people go back into the office at least a minimum of 3 days a week. And the target billable hours for associates is in the range of 1,850 to 2,000 hours a year. So if we assume 5 working days over 52 weeks, this means approximately 7.1 to 7.7 billable hours a day. And this is the target that you need to reach in order to get your bonus. And if you aren't familiar with what billable hours are, this is not just hours that you've worked, but it's actual billable time that can be charged to a client. So, what do corporate lawyers actually do day to day? I think I'd break it down into 3 categories: correspondence, reviewing and drafting documents, and project management. With correspondence, it's about having calls and emails and meetings with clients, either discussing, what they actually need from you, discussing potential issues that you've found or that they've found that they want to flag with you, and discussing the timeline of when things are expected to progress. And then of course, you've got correspondence with the other lawyers on the other side, negotiating deal terms, negotiating documents, and requesting information from the other side as well. And then you've got drafting and reviewing documents. A big part of a corporate lawyer's job is due diligence, which is going through and reviewing existing documentation for the company that's being sold and trying to find any potential issues with the company or with the transaction itself. And then you've also got other contracts and documents that need to be drafted. And these documents are prepared to evidence the transaction, as well as the terms that have been agreed by the parties to proceed with the transaction. As a very, very junior lawyer, you probably won't be doing much of the negotiating. Actually, a lot of this part of the process, you'll be proofreading, which is really fun. And the third thing is project management. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved. So actually, as a junior lawyer, this is probably something that you'd probably be most involved in, managing those logistics. You're managing feedback from other various legal teams. You're managing the status of documents and where they're at. You're arranging documents for signature. You pretty much have a high level view of what needs to get done in order for this whole transaction to be completed. And you're just pushing those things along. Of course, this is just a very, very general breakdown of what a corporate lawyer does day to day. But let me know in the comments down below if this is something that you'd like me to dive deeper into. And as a quick note, as a corporate lawyer, I have never gone to court. I'm pretty much allergic from anything court or procedural related. Unlike suits, you'd never catch me in front of a judge. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the environment and the culture. And that's why I'm sitting next to these leaves. I've definitely heard all the horror stories of people getting screamed at or verbally abused. But personally, I'm pretty fortunate and nothing that dramatic has ever happened to me. Some people just deal with pressure very poorly. And if they're in a position of authority, they can tend to take that out on someone that is, subordinate to them. So I do think that in this industry, you do need to have a bit of a thick skin and a good attitude and to not let these types of things bother you too much. I will say though, sometimes I have really felt like more of a resource than a human being. I've had partners completely forget who I am after I've worked with them, or even get me confused with other Asian associates, which is just really poor form, and it's just not a nice feeling, especially when you're working very hard for these people. And as for the people, you will definitely meet a lot of smart and talented people. And for the most part, the people I've dealt with have been very considerate and really respectful. But as is the reality in any job really, you will run into those types of people that maybe their whole identity rests on the fact that they are a lawyer and they come off as condescending or entitled. All I can say about culture is that it's not really firm dependent, it's more team dependent. You can't just talk to one person from a firm and base your expectations off what they had experienced. It's not really going to inform how your experience is going to pan out if you choose to work there. What you need to do is to be speaking to the people in the specific team that you expect to be working in to really get an idea of what the vibe is like working with those partners and those other associates. And I do at this point also want to address salary. Back in Australia, when I first started, I was in the 80,000 range. In my second year, I was in the 90,000 range. And in my third year, I was about 110. And in New York, the salaries are vastly different. As of this year, 2023, first year associates are making 215,000. Second years are 225,000. Third years are 250,000. I think fourth years are 290,000. So yeah, that's quite a big difference there. Hopefully after this video, you have a better idea of what being a corporate lawyer is like. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. For me, when I started going down this path, I never really had the intention to become a lawyer. Truthfully, I got a law degree because I got the marks to do it in high school. And apart from my parents wanting me to do something that would provide a bit more security for my future, I think I also wanted to do a job that was respected and had a level of prestige to it. I guess I wanted to validate that I was a smart and capable person. And I ended up going into corporate law, working at global law firms, because that's sort of what all of the people in the cohorts ahead of me were doing. That's what all my contemporaries were doing. So I sort of was just following along that path that was set out. And essentially I just chased what other people chased. Would my decision to pursue corporate law or study law at all be different given what I know now? I honestly can't say that I would have. I don't regret doing it because it got me to where I am today. Anyways, hopefully that all made sense. If you want to see a video that I made about the study tips that I used to pass the New York bar exam, just click right here, and I'll see you guys in another video.